Welcome to the Glowland podcast, the podcast for remote work and freelancing in practice. Welcome to this new podcast interview of the Glowland podcast, the podcast for freelancing and remote work in practice. Today with me is Tijs Hensen. He's a coworker that I know from Málaga, and he's also a web developer and an entrepreneur. He has multiple years experience in his field, and thanks for doing the podcast with me today. And you're also working remotely.
Thank you for inviting me.
Sure, my pleasure. And maybe tell a little bit about yourself if I forgot something, and what you do. And what your current kind of engagement status is.
All right. I'm working from Málaga in Spain. Before that, I was working for several different companies in the Netherlands. And then there was a point that I decided there's so much I like about Spain. Let's see if I can bring my work over there. And I thought it was possible because a lot of my work is behind the computers, is with the computer. So to start, let's say maybe 10 years, 15 years ago, I started making websites. And later on, that shifted to everything that's comes with websites like SEO, WordPress development. Later on, there's also a shift into web applications. And I think that's the point where we're in now, a combination of website development and web application development.
Okay. You also created application yourself recently, an app actually for project management, right?
Yes. During my consultant work in the Netherlands, I found out that the project tools, the planning tools that were available were not really on a good level for communicating project plannings. So while I was working there, I hacked more or less a visual planning, and from there on, I was building it into HTML, and later on, together with a developer, we turned it into an app.
Okay, great. And you said you're working remotely ever since you came to Málaga.
Mm-hmm.
And how's your experience with this? What are like the benefits? What are the challenges you have on a daily basis?
Well, the benefits, of course, working remote is that you can live wherever you want. In my case, that was Spain. Must say it was never my intent to stay in Málaga for long. I was thinking about traveling from one city to another, but there were so many factors I liked about Málaga. It's very easy to get to reach by plane. It's close to the beach. The sun is always shining. There's a lot of nature. You can walk, hikes, cycle here. So there were a lot of factors that I decided to go to Málaga. If you look at the freelance work, that was, of course, a challenge. Is it possible to work remotely? Because, well, the basic question is you should see each other. There's a need to see each other, to talk to each other, to share experiences. And I must say, and I actually knew this before, this works well also by video calling and email, chats, WhatsApp. So, yeah.
What's the challenges though? What's I see a lot of benefits also myself, but I think there's also uniquely different challenges for every person. Do you find it hard sometimes to work remotely?
Yeah, of course. There are times that you think, I wish I had a team around me, people I could how to say it, share things with if you have questions or if you feel angry or happy, angry because a client isn't responding or responds in a way you didn't expect, or happy because a project is finished and you just want to share it with someone. Great thing is that we have a very vivid co-working here. So actually that fills up the gap. But freelancing is a lot of working on your own by yourself. And that is a challenge.
Yeah. So do you think you're going to do this lifestyle more long-term, or do you think maybe at some point you want to get more into a more traditional engagement or something?
It's a good question. I would say, well, actually, the projects we're doing now, I'm working together with a designer working in the same space, and I'm also looking for more technical person. So actually, we're starting to build a small team here, and that's something I really like. So we still work as freelancers, but we unite, we gather, and we can take on bigger projects with better results. So I think,
yeah, like an agency,
almost like a small agency, a pool of freelancers which are more than, how to say, than the sum of each other.
That sounds like Glowland. But yeah, it's a good concept. I like it. I think cooperation is very important, and also what makes it hard sometimes if people are purely working remotely with other remote workers, that the round trip time for some messages is fairly high sometimes. You're waiting for some answer, or someone's blocked and so on. Mm-hmm. So I think also one of the arts of working remotely, one of the challenges and one of the skills is to be able to divide your time into work that you can do independent from others, and then if they are available, always have some overlap and do the work together that you need to do together, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a different way of working with its challenges, of course. And so.
Well, just to what you mentioned before, a couple of years ago, no, actually 5 years ago, I went to Bali, Thailand before with my laptop, decided to travel and see if I can do some projects there. And then you find out that time zones are a really important aspect. Another benefit of working in Spain is that you have the same time zone as in the Netherlands.
Yeah, that's true.
If you talk about challenging, time zones can be a challenge. So don't make it too difficult for yourself and fly directly to I don't know, Brazil or Thailand or Bali, because then you have the challenge of the huge time differences.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. Also, our team at Glowland, we're distributed. Mm-hmm. We have people in different countries. Like one of our writers is in South America and Mexico at the moment. Another one is in Germany. Some of our recruiters are in Australia. And one is traveling through Europe. So what we had to do is for them to find their own tasks that are independent from others. So one is writing blog articles. Mm-hmm. Another is basically doing the podcast in German, and the other recruiters, they can more or less choose their time, but it gets complicated if the time zone is different from the freelancer's time zone. So yeah, it's a challenge, and I think it needs special processes if you want to truly conquer remote work, so to say. You have to have your processes made for remote work, I think. Did you ever work in a mixed team where people were, probably you did, like for some of the customers where people were non-remote and remote compared to a team or a customer that is fully remote? Did you see a difference there? Or?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, I work on an app before. I was working also with a developer from Pakistan. The time difference is, I have to think about. Do you know what the time difference is, more or less?
I think it's plus.
I thought.
I think plus. Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah. +4, +5, something like this.
Early, so it makes you. It structures your work as well. You have to make sure that you cannot just say just start with the work, because there's a moment that I'm still in bed and they have the opportunity to start work. So if your briefing is not really clear, if there are holes or if there are things that are open, you lose a very valuable time. So what you really learn is, okay, there is just a moment we cannot communicate, or communication means if I want it, I have to go, I stand up really early, or I have to work during the night. So it makes you in that way really focused. Is my briefing as complete as possible? Are there no flaws in it? And that's something in general good for project management, but it's something I learned through that process of working with people from within different time zones.
Yeah, that's a good point, to make sure that your communication is complete, because you don't have the don't have the opportunity to do round trips a lot. So rather add more information than less. That's the thing. I see the benefits of that, of course, but it's almost, sometimes I think about maybe like a combination of working remotely and not being completely off-road, is a good deal, because if someone has a good routine, you know when to catch them. But if someone is currently like traveling, or still working and traveling, and sometimes taking a day off to do some leisure activity and so on, it gets harder, even because you cannot know when this person is really available.
Yeah, definitely true. I see. You need to have a lot of discipline if you decide to travel a lot. Let's say 1 week or 2 weeks at a location, and you go to another location. And it's also very stressful, because you know that when you travel, there are unexpected things. You booked an Airbnb and you found out the Wi-Fi is shit. And you lose valuable time. So exactly. It's important to at least stay a couple of months at the same place, and make sure that you have a place different than your house, your apartment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a good point. That's why I also like to have a routine and a co-working space and this stuff, because it's different. I think remote work is different than being a digital nomad. Digital nomadism, I think, is very popular these days, but it means constant travel, constant change of environment, and I don't know if that is the solution to be productive in your daily life. So this is I think two different concepts. I think if you work with a bigger team, digital nomadism doesn't work that well. But if you are on your own, like Jasper, for example, friend of ours who has a company that sells e-commerce goods online, he is pretty much running the company himself, and it doesn't matter where he is. If he's just dependent on himself, then mostly at least, then it doesn't matter if he's a digital nomad or a remote worker, has a routine or not. But if you're like in a big team, I think it's really hard to work with someone who doesn't have a routine.
And if I would say, if you decide to become a digital nomad, it's because that was a dream of mine for a long time. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. I found out that people, for example, already have a WooCommerce shop, or do some influence work, or do have a project that, for at least they know they have a certain basic income and a certainty that it will continue for months or even years. And they know that if they work a couple of hours a day at least, they're good. And it's a totally different approach than you work in a project where other people, well, first of all, you have a time and a budget in the project, but you also work with your team members, and there's more communication, and so you need more structure. And in that case, I would say remote work it suits better. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you said that your dream was to be a digital nomad. How come? What was the process? Did you read a book that inspired you? Did you see something or know other nomads, or how come you had this dream?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have to say I have to go back a couple of years, maybe 6-7 years ago. I think one of the reasons was the internet. When I was building websites, when I was conveying or sitting with clients and telling them all the opportunities which the internet brought, like you can work from anywhere, you can work whenever you want. The only thing you need is a laptop. So somehow I wanted to put that in practice. And of course, there was also those stories like people who travel for years and they run their own business. I think a book that really influenced me also a little bit, which really influenced me. And I think it's the 4-hour workweek. I think
by Tim Ferriss. Yeah. That's the classic.
I read it. It must be 8 years ago. It's at least 8 years ago that I read it. And you think, okay, if this can work, we should definitely choose this life instead of the typical 9-to-5 life, the corporate.
Yeah, I agree. I read the same book. I had the same kind of goal. It's interesting if you listen to Tim Ferriss's TED Talks. Mm-hmm. He went through a lot of different phases, I feel, during his whole work life. Like you see that he starts out with this idea of being totally location independent and working for himself. And then you see he kind of goes through a burnout where he just realizes he's just spending too much time working and spending too much time alone and not really doing what he loves to do, dancing and basically doing sports and so on.
Yeah.
And so the balance was gone, and then he kind of decides to try to fix that and do his processes so that he has more leisure time. So I feel like ultimately the book is about how to become so wealthy that you don't have to really work a lot anymore.
Yeah.
That is, I think, one of the key things, that if you're wealthy, like if you have a lot of income or if you have a lot of resources, then you can basically freely choose your what you spend your time on. So that is a little bit more, I think, real than telling people they can only work 4 hours a week and still be basically part of the new rich, how he calls it. I find the book title a little bit misleading. It has some great value and some great ideas, and I'm also happy to have read it, but it promotes the wrong idea. Like I feel the wrong, unrealistic idea that is not attainable to most people, basically.
Yeah, definitely. I remember the book, and I realized later also he worked his ass off. I think he was doing 60 or 80 hours a week, and he
exactly
else. But he said he built in these years he built up a business. So he went from building up a business and put a lot of effort into it, to a point that he said, okay, now let's see what I can delegate. Now let's see what I can automate. And found out in the end, he only needed 4 hours to maintain his company, even grow his company a little, but he had to go through that phase. And some people, they finish their school and they think, oh, I read the book, 4 hours a week, that sounds very good. Let's book a ticket to Bali and start.
Oh yeah, these people often return earlier than they think they would, because if you have to have a good plan, I feel, or a good source of income that is steady or something. So the problem also is if you do consulting work, like a lot of people do, right? Then you're always dependent on your hourly rate. So you only get paid if you work that hours. That is not passive income. That is active income. You trade your time for money.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you want to find a revenue stream that is not dependent on your time. And I think that's the real challenge, to be able to find something that is truly passive income. And that is really hard to do, because that's basically everybody's goal. And it requires a lot of work to go into that, I think, prior to being able to detach yourself from that business. So it should be called the 4 hours work week after years of the 80-hour work week.
That would be a title.
That would be more honest, but it wouldn't sell that well, I guess. So it's a lot of different challenges you face if you find your journey, but to be in this remote world. But of course, we all do it because remote work enables us to be wherever we want and live the life that we want. Do you think that in the future remote work will be even more popular and more common?
Yes, definitely. One of the things I saw, and I'm doing this for a couple of years now, is, first of all, the internet connection is getting better and better. Even if you work, I'm from the Netherlands, but if I travel anywhere in Europe, I can still have almost an unlimited amount of data on my mobile phone. I can connect my mobile phone to my laptop. So I'm always connected. I'm always connected to the tools I need. And the other thing is, people are getting more and more used to this idea that your team doesn't have to be in the same room, in the same office all day.
Exactly.
And I think there's a generation, maybe the generation I said below us.
I think X. No, we're Y, so I think they are X.
Yeah, or millennials, or I don't know.
I think millennials is also including generation Y. I think. I'm not sure how this all works, but I think millennials is a broader term.
Yeah.
But anyway, the next generation.
Yeah, and I think the next generation is also a little bit more aware. I'm aware of what we're actually doing. There are new problems arising. Plastic pollution, climate change.
Yeah, exactly.
And they become aware, and they're like, do I want to spend my time in this corporate company, or do I want to make a difference, or do I want to see something in my life and travel and see if there are other opportunities to make my living. So I think there will change. They see a lot of, Instagram and all those how do you call it, social medias. It makes it also, that's the other aspect. 10 years ago it was relatively easy, but not super easy, to book a flight, find a hotel, and find a good co-working. And now in every big city, there are plenty of co-workings. There is an Airbnb where you can just choose wherever you want to stay. There's booking.com. So all these things makes it really easy just to say, okay, I'm going to the city. I don't know anything or nothing, but just by Googling it and going to those websites, in an hour and 2 hours, you already know the city. You already can book your hotel or Airbnb, your co-working, even your fitness place. You can even go and do some meetups and already book them in advance. So, and that's also, I think, a game changer in the remote or digital nomad world.
And Tinder in advance. I think they have that feature.
Yeah.
You can change your location before you go somewhere, so you can Tinder.
Yeah, that works. That works.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Technology is catching up. I think in every country, the infrastructure, many countries, the infrastructure gets way better, and the access to internet is way better. And also with the plans of having these low hemisphere satellites with providing mobile internet, this will also increase like the travelability, let's say, of many different countries that you couldn't travel before. And yeah, with these tools, you can definitely predict a boost. And I think also for the environment, it's way better to be able to work remotely, because no one likes to commute, and it also pollutes a lot of the environment, like contributes a lot to the pollution. So it's really a good step in the right direction, I think, to be able to work remotely.
Yeah, yes, especially when we find a more, I said, environmental friendly way of flying.
Yeah.
Maybe Elon Musk is setting us in the right direction with his Boring company and his Hyperloop. But that will take a couple of years. But it's. I remember when I was doing consultancy in Amsterdam, I was just driving. I was leaving my my apartment at 5:30 or 6, and then 2 hours drive, and I already knew that at least more than 3/4 of it was traffic. And you feel just stupid commuting, doing this, sitting in your car. You can actually do nothing. And I think, yeah, that for me was also a game changer. Like, do I want to spend 2 or 3 hours a day just commuting? Use it this time better. Yeah.
Exactly. It's kind of lost time, and also polluting the environment. And I don't know, also contributing, I think, to the housing crisis in many cities, because the big cities where the work is, London, New York, let's say Paris, and San Francisco, and so on, housing is so incredibly expensive that a lot of people cannot afford to rent there, even like a small flat or a room sometimes. And this has to do with the fact that you have to be close to your workplace in order to work in that city for that company. And remote work makes that obsolete. So you can basically choose where you go, and maybe we will decide to have a more balanced, location-independent kind of distribution of people. So let's say if you have like a community of a couple of hundred people who decide to go out in the countryside and build their own little village that works remotely, that could be some model in the future where you can have bigger houses, bigger land, and more space, and still be able to work for bigger customers and corporations, basically.
Yeah, I think that there will be a shift we're going to see in the next maybe 5 or 10 years. I think with the Industrial Revolution, we moved to the cities because there was the work.
Yeah, exactly.
Now work can be done everywhere, but there's also, I think, more awareness of what we eat and our balance with nature. So yeah, maybe we find those not abundant, those little villages where no one wants to live, and where you can actually buy a house for a couple of €1,000.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and be in the middle of some beautiful natural, like forests or lakes, or have some really beautiful outlets there.
Yeah.
So the only reason people aren't there anymore is because there's no work. But if work is digital, and the digital connection, like the internet connection, is there, then you don't need to leave, and you can actually build a beautiful life in a big house in that village, instead of living in your little little 1-bedroom apartment that you pay €1,000 for in London or something.
Well, €1,000 is cheap, I think.
Yeah, I'm not up to date with the craze, but yeah, I'm sure.
But that's definitely a development I see happening. And the other thing is, of course, the fear of, you don't want to move in like a small village somewhere where you don't know anyone. But I can imagine if we get more organized, there will maybe become something like an Airbnb for villages or farms.
Oh yeah, maybe also like the collective, like we have in the co-working spaces now. If we think collectively and everyone there is working remotely, we might be able to say, okay, half the year, let's basically buy 10 houses in that village, and half the year we can go there and have like a community escape, basically. And that would be cool. So you're there with your friends, with 10 friends, and you have a nice, you have a nice social experience, and you can work from there, and you have a nice natural experience. I think that could work.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's, we should just set it up, I think.
Let's start it. Yeah. Great. No, I think there's some great potential in the future, and I'm also excited to see what's happening in the next 10 years. So, getting back to you and what you're doing, do you want to share anything about yourself, like your website or where people can find you?
They can. I do have a website. It's called thewebcoach.nl. Primarily focused on the Dutch market, and lately we are working on progressive web apps, and it's something I really like because you can actually create an application in a matter of weeks instead of those long processes where it takes months to develop something like that.
Yeah.
So you're not dependent on the iOS or the Android, systems. You can. Yeah. And that's also something I really like. I always like to be a little bit ahead of things, of technology, and see where things are going and try to anticipate as much as possible. That's something we do together with the designer and developer. And it's cool. Yeah, clients are really happy because they're super surprised that we, build a prototype that already looks like an app in weeks, or not even a week, and they're just like, wow. I think if we show this to the client, they already think we build this app, so their cost of investment is really low, and they already know. Really, in the beginning of an idea of a startup or a project, if they have any chance of financing that idea, so that's really cool.
Okay, that sounds really great. So the webcoach.nl. If you guys need projects, to the listeners, if you guys need projects and prototypes, check out Tijs' website.
There's a new website coming. It's That's something a lot of people must recognize. They're never satisfied with their website, their own website. But new website is coming.
Okay, great. Yes, thank you again, Tijs, to join us here in the Glowland podcast. And I'm going to wrap this up now. We want to keep it. I think we covered like a lot of subjects and a lot of topics and a lot of interesting ideas also. So for all the listeners, be sure to check out our podcast on iTunes and on Spotify. We're publishing every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks there's a new episode. And stay tuned for the next one. Thanks everyone for listening, and see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Glowland podcast, the podcast for freelancing and remote work in practice.